Hello, good morning everyone. UN Mehta Institute of Cardiology and Research Center is organizing continuous cardiac education program starting from 26th March today onwards, in which every Saturday there will be academic session provided by our senior faculties. And as a part of that, today's topic is balloon mitral valvuloplasty, which will be presented by Dr. Saraj Jain sir, who is a professor in cardiology and having a wide experience in academics of 26 years. So thank you everyone and looking forward for your kind presence.
Good morning. Today I am going to speak regarding percutaneous mitral commissurotomy, that is the BMV intervention procedure, which has revolutionized the treatment of mitral stenosis. So coming to the first slide, the leading cause of mitral stenosis throughout the world, we all know, is the rheumatic carditis. 25% of the cases have the isolated mitral stenosis, 40% have combined MS and MR. There may be multivalvular involvement in around 40% of patients, with tricuspid valve in approximately 6% patients. Pulmonary involvement because of the rheumatic disease is very rare. The overall prevalence estimated to be about 1.5 to 2 per thousand in all age groups in India. So around, if we consider our population at 1.3 billion, that suggests there are 2 to 2.5 million patients of rheumatic heart disease in our country. So coming to the natural history of mitral stenosis, in India, critical MS may be found in children as young as 6 to 12 years old, that is up to 25% of the cases are at such a young age. In the asymptomatically or minimally symptomatic patient, survival is very good, up to 80% for 10 years, and 60% of patients having no progression of the symptoms for long time. But once the symptoms develop, then there is survival is very less. After if limiting symptoms occurs, 0 to 15% of the patient survives for the 10 years. So once there is a severe pulmonary hypertension, then the survival is less than 3 years. Coming to the another thing, the mitral stenosis with atrial fibrillation, 30 to 40% of MS patient may develop atrial fibrillation. It occurs more commonly with older age patient, and once the atrial fibrillation develops, the 10-year survival rate is 25% as compared to around 45% in patients who remain in sinus rhythm. On more recent series, BMV studies that the prevalence of AF ranged from 4% to up to 27% in various series. So the mortality in untreated patient with mitral stenosis because of the various reasons like progressive pulmonary and systemic congestion or heart failure, systemic embolism in around 20 to 30% of the patient, pulmonary embolism in 10%, and infection. The progression of the mitral valve area, decrease in the annual loss of mitral valve area range from 0.09 to 0.32 centimeter per square centimeter of the body area per year. So MS in young, as I already said, in Indian scenario, the mitral stenosis affects usually very young at young age because the rheumatic carditis developed at a very early age in our country. So even we can get a lot of patients before the age of 20, or that is what we can say the juvenile MS. So it is very common in various series. The patients of around 10 to 15 per 10 to 15 years of age, around 55% of patients have MS. So coming to the various stages of mitral stenosis, that can be, by definition, it can be progressive MS, it can be asymptomatic severe MS, or it can be symptomatic severe MS. Progressive MS, the valve area is more than 1.5 centimeter with no symptoms or minimal symptoms, and there is mild to moderate LA enlargement. Asymptomatic severe MS, mitral valve area has come down to less than 1.5 square centimeter with severe LA enlargement, but they are still not that symptomatic. And symptomatic severe MS, that is mitral valve area is less than 1.5 centimeter with various symptoms. So what the rheumatic carditis causes? It causes the thickening of the leaflet edges, fusion of the commissurus, and caudal shortening and fusion, and all these leads to the mitral stenosis. These anatomical changes leads to a typical functional appearance of the rheumatic mitral valve, that is, we said that the fish mouth appearance of the mitral valve. In earlier stages of the disease, the relatively flexible leaflets snap open. There is a snap sound in the diastole into a curved shape, that is the dome shaped. But as this diastolic doming is most evident in the motion of the anterior mitral leaflet, and it is the classical feature of the rheumatic fever, rheumatic heart disease. But when the calcification occurs, thickening occurs, this doming goes, and the calcification then valve becomes non-pliable. So various approaches to mechanical relief of mitral stenosis, starting from the history. So for the closed mitral valvulotomy, since many years, if you have seen many patients with a lateral scar on the left chest, then the open surgical valvulotomy with a midline incision. Again, the valve replacement, especially when there is associated MS with IMR, and the balloon mitral valvuloplasty, that is with the percutaneous route through the femoral. These are the various approaches to relieve the mitral stenosis. So coming to the BMV or PBMC, in severe or symptomatic MS is associated, we know that is associated with poor long-term outcome if the stenosis is not relieved mechanically. Percutaneous BMV has now become the procedure of choice in the treatment of mitral stenosis. It is a life-saving emergency procedure in many patients with refractory pulmonary edema because of the mitral stenosis. So BMV is a remarkable landmark intervention in the field of interventional cardiology that leads to the great help in treatment of stenosis mitral valve. And if you see now, if you might have, because your young generation is not, you might not have seen any case of the closed mitral commissurotomy, which was very common when I was DM president. So because closed mitral valvulotomy is almost obsolete, nobody is doing nowadays because of the availability of the better percutaneous route for mitral stenosis. So what are the various indications for BMV? If you consider any patient with severe mitral stenosis, with severe symptoms and mitral valve area less than 1.5 is the class 1 indication. In the severely symptomatic patient with NYHA class 3 or 4 also. Then is class 2 indication is asymptomatic patient with mitral valve, but the mitral valve area is less than 1 centimeter square of the body surface area, or mitral valve surgery is reasonable for severely symptomatic patient with severe MS, provided that there are the other operative indications. Then the class 2B indication may be considered in asymptomatic patient with severe MS, area is less than 1.5 and favorable valve morphology. Then may be considered in symptomatic patient with more than 1.5, even if the area is more than 1.5, but there are symptoms, and maybe in the severely symptomatic patient with area less than 1.5. So BMV also may be considered in symptomatic patient in whom the surgery carries high risk for adverse events or outcomes, even when valve morphology is not ideal for BMV, including patient with restenosis after a previous BMV. Then the very old frail patients which are very high risk for surgery or which have the associated severe ischemic heart disease or complicated by pulmonary, renal or neoplastic diseases, or women in the childbearing age on whom MVR is undesirable, and pregnant women with MS. So all these can be the indications for BMV. BMV may again be further be considered for patients with mild MS in whom symptoms cannot be explained by other causes and who experience pulmonary hypertension with exercise. So there are so many expanding indications of balloon mitral valvuloplasty, mitral restenosis, mitral stenosis, even with the LA clot. Of course, you have to see the position of the clot that I will discuss later. Then patient with moderate or grade 2 mitral regurgitation, especially with the central jets, they can also go for BMV. As a hybrid therapy for patient with AR, AS or CABG, you do the BMV and then patient go for AVR or CABG, and patient with Lutem-Bescher syndrome. So this was the revolutionized the treatment. Until the first publication by Inoue, he was in fact a cardiac surgeon and co-workers from Japan describing BMV in 1984. Surgery was the only treatment for patient with mitral stenosis before that. So the success of the procedure depends upon the clinical profile of the patient, echocardiographic evaluation, transeptal catheterization, very important step, balloon preparation, crossing of the mitral valve, and safe and effective balloon dilatation, and avoiding complications, especially two catastrophic complications are MR and cardiac tamponade. Coming to the clinical profile of the patient, usually the patient should be in the NYHA class 2 that can be lied down on the cath lab table comfortably, and when a patient is in NYHA class 4, that you have to intubate and you have to do under anesthesia. When a younger patient with pliable non-calcific valve with minimal subvalvular disease has better results. Then coming to the echocardiography, both transthoracic and transesophageal has got role. When I was DM resident, transesophageal was not easily available, so we used to do only with the transthoracic evaluation only. But now, because of the so much easily availability of the transesophageal and so many facilities, transesophageal should be must, especially in the patients if you are suspecting patient with atrial fibrillation. So traditionally, different grades of thickening, mobility, calcification, and subvalvular disease of mitral apparatus are assessed prior to BMV. A pliable valve responds to balloon dilatation better than a non-pliable valve. However, it is the calcification that is important, especially if it is in the commissures. So, is the most important characteristic that determines the major concern during BMV, because the commissural calcification is the most dangerous and most catastrophic. Even if the valve is heavily calcified with no calcification of the commissure, BMV can be tried with palliative balloon dilatation. So the as I already said, high quality transthoracic and transesophageal is essential part of proper patient selection. Transesophageal prior to planned procedure excludes the presence of LA thrombus and moderate or greater MR. Then coming to such assessment of the LA size is very important. Small LA size tells about less space available for manipulation of catheters, wires and balloons. A very large RSI detected by transthoracic will be problematic during transeptal puncture. Presence of aneurysm of IS, although rare, should also be mentioned while doing TE transthoracic echo for a patient undergoing BMV. Similarly, a thick IS can identify prior that the septal puncture may be difficult because of the thickness of the interatrial septum. A thrombus should be excluded in cardiac chambers prior to BMV. Most of the sites of LA can be effectively seen by transthoracic, but T is helpful when where the LA clot cannot be seen by the transthoracic echo. One can also define the fresh or organized nature of the thrombus for all by transthoracic echo and degree of MR to look for hemodynamically significant lesions of the other wall. So these all things are very important. So a good echo is very first requirement for patient undergoing balloon mitral valvuloplasty. You know all the Manjunath classification of the LA clot. So if the clot is in the LA appendage or is just extending out of the LA appendage, or it is above the plane of the fossa ovalis, all these cases you can do the BMV with precaution. But if it is a big clot extending beyond fossa ovalis or on the clot on the fossa ovalis or a mobile clot, all these are contraindications for doing BMV. Wilkins score, you all know the Wilkinson score, everybody is familiar with that. It is used since many years. It depends on it is given the grading from 1 to 4, and various factors are mobility, subvalvular thickening, valvular thickening, and the calcification, and various points are given based on the scores. So if the Wilkinson score is less than 8, it is considered that the patient is very suitable for BMV. Here you can see in the picture that the mobility, thickening, calcification all are less. So there is only great the Wilkinson score is 4, so it is the most suitable for BMV. In the last part you see the calcification and even the subvalvular disease is significant, thickening is significant, so the Wilkinson score is 13, so it is less suitable for BMV. So most investigators use the Wilkinson score which since many years, in which a total score under 8 is considered to represent favorable anatomy for BMV. There are some limitations of the BMV, especially echocardiography limited the ability to differentiate nodular fibrosis from calcification. You cannot differentiate between nodular fibrosis and calcification. Assessment of the commissural involvement is not included in or underestimated in Wilkinson's score, that is very important. Does not account for relative contribution of each variable. Frequent underestimation of the subvalvular disease, and does not use results from TE or 3D echocardiography is not included in the Wilkinson score. The Chen et al. Modified Wilkinson score parameters for subvalvular thickening, because that is very important, according to the involved segment of the caudal length, less than 1/3, more than 1/3, or more than 2/3. Then Reed score includes leaflet motion, leaflet thickness, subvalvular disease, and commissural calcification, and various points are given to the disease depending upon the mobility, thickness, and commissural calcification. Here you can see the grading of the commissural calcification, which is here no calcification, grade 0. Then the grade 1 calcium when only the posteromedial commissure and half of this is involved, and the grade 2 here, then grade again 2, both the commissure with calcification, and it is grade 3. So PMC acts in the same way as the surgical commissurotomy by opening the fused commissure. The mechanism of relieving symptoms is by opening the fused commissures. BMV is of little help or no help in cases of restricted valvular mobility caused by valvular fibrosis and severe subvalvular disease. So here you can see mechanism of BMV by splitting the fused commissure. These are the fused commissure, and here the open commissures. So patient selection is very important for BMV, the clinical profile and the valve morphology. These are the very important parameters. So evaluation of patient must take into account the degree of functional disability of the patient, the presence and contraindication to transseptal catheterization, and the risk involved in surgery. So it is critical to ensure that there are no anatomical contraindications to the technique, that is the presence of left atrial thrombus, mitral regurgitation more than grade 1/4, massive or bicommissural calcification, associated severe aortic or severe tricuspid valve disease, severe concomitant coronary artery disease requiring bypass surgery. The best patient for BMV are usually younger age, that is the age less than 45, patient in normal sinus rhythm, echocardiographic Wilkinson score less than 8, no history of previous surgical commissurotomy, pre-BMV MR less than grade 1. So there are two approaches for doing the balloon mitral valvuloplasty. One is transarterial and the transvenous. Mostly we do it through the transvenous, and I will discuss that mainly. Various balloons available are the double balloon technique, NOU technique, metallic valvulotomes, and retrograde technique. So selection of appropriate size, usually what we do is that we use the INOU or Acura balloon. So the size is determined by the height of the patient in centimeter divided by 10 and plus 10 has been proposed, but this relationship is not always accurate. You can determine the size of the valve by other methods, and you have to see the patient's body surface area, height and weight also. So you can if the body surface area is more and the patient is weight is more, then you can go on oversizing the balloons. And one important method to determine the balloon size is just to measure the annular diameter of the mitral valve. It can be done in the 2-chamber or 4-chamber view, which will give you a rough estimate of the sizing of the balloon. These all things can be taken into consideration for balloon sizing, but try to keep the balloon sizing little under dilate size, because the over dilating may cause the increase the risk of severe MR. Coming to the general consideration, BMV is usually performed in the fasting stage, obtained at TE just prior to BMV, that we all do, Wilkinson score. Then the intra-procedural T transthoracic echo is to assess the baseline valve characteristics and antibiotic prophylaxis. Then coming to the transvenous or antegrade approach, more widely used approach and is usually performed through the femoral vein. Transseptal catheterization is the first and the one of the most crucial steps in the procedure. So how we do the transseptal catheterization? The condition necessary of safe knowledge of the anatomy is very important. What is and usually the patient with mitral stenosis has the distorted anatomy, which in whom normal geometry has been lost because both atria are enlarged and the convexity of septum is exaggerated. Knowledge of the contraindications for transseptal catheterization, and of course very important is the experience of the operators, because as the experience of the operators increases, the procedure risk decreases. And especially every septal puncture is a new thing, because even if it may take time, but you have to give the time for this step, because if you are wrong in this step, then there will be pericardial tamponade, which can be life threatening. So you have to be very thorough, and you have to be satisfied with the position, then only you should go for septal puncture. Echocardiography during transseptal catheterization has been the potential to enhance its safety, but most of the times in experienced operators they don't require echocardiography. Those of my generation usually they can do BMV without the help of the echocardiography. So coming to the history of septal puncture, in 1956 arose a surgical intern in John Hopkins under Belloc, went to the National Heart Institute, worked under Dr. Morrow in Maryland, and to approach the left atrium there were various methods were used. Supraesternal approach, a long needle passed retroesternally through the great vessels into the left atrium, or posterior thoracic method, transthoracic method, a needle passed lateral to the vertical column into the LA, or transbronchial approach. All these methods were used to approach the left atrium, but all these methods are risky and dangerous. So Ross used a long curved needle inserted through the dox saphenous vein to access the left atrium via the interatrial septum. That's what the first time it was started. These animal experiments were followed by the first clinical application in 1959. Then Dr. Brockenbrough, also working at the National Institute of Health, modified the transseptal needle to allow insertion via the Seldinger technique and published his data in 1960 and 62. So in 1960, Brockenbrough and Brunwald needle came into existence. In 1979, the Duff and Mullins sheath dilator, through which the septal puncture needle is inserted, has come into existence. The crowd found the use of RAO projection for the first time. So transcatheterized septal catheterization become routine during balloon mitral valvuloplasty presently in the Parma, and is also used nowadays very commonly by the interventional electrophysiologist for doing various EP studies. So here you see the Mullins sheath and this is the septal puncture needle. So the transseptal needle comes made by the Medtronic company. It is the Brockenbrough needle. Two sizes are available. For adult it is 18 gauge tapering to 21 gauge. So 2-3 millimeter beyond the tip of the cannula is there is a cannula and there is an inner stellate. So the stellate is much stiffer and closely fitting, sharpened and produced 2 to 3 millimeter beyond the tip of the cannula. For adult the length is 71 centimeter and for the pediatric it is 56 centimeter. So this is, you can see the IS plane in supine patient, from that is the fossa ovalis plane usually extend from 2 to 7 o'clock position here, and the 4 to 6 o'clock position, if the anatomy is normal, that is the normal fossa ovalis plane and is the site of septal puncture. So this is the arrow which points towards the 4 to 6. You have to keep the septal puncture needle in such a way that it is projecting between this arrow is projecting between the 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock position. If there is a huge LA bulging septum, fossa ovalis shifts inferiorly and posteriorly, then you may have to change the arrow direction and you may have to go up to 7 or 8 o'clock position. Or if there is suppose there is a small LA with inward septum, then you may have to go to 3 or 4 o'clock position. So depending upon the LA size, anatomy, you have to manipulate the position of the needle. This is the AP view and this is the lateral view. So how this is fitted in the Mullins sheath. So the 0.03 wire is innominate when it first passed over that Mullins sheath and the septal puncture needle is passed. And then there is a gradual descent from SVC to RA and RA to fossa ovalis. So Brockenbrough transseptal needle is now advanced through the catheter position into the SVC with a metal arrow indicator pointing towards the 12 o'clock position. We have to keep it fixed with our hands and we have to control that there should not be subtle jump. So 3 sequential landmarks, that is bumps are traversed in withdrawal as it enters the right atrium from superior vena cava, first bump, and then as it moves over the ascending aorta where the tactile sensation of aortic pulsation aids in localization, and then in the fossa ovalis. In approximately 15 to 20% of patients, you don't have to do the septal puncture, you get a PFO. So the septal puncture needle goes by itself into the PFO. One of my friend, he used to say that you have to just search for the PFO you can get in lot of patients. So if you go through the PFO, it can be very safe that the risk of tamponade goes on is usually gone. But sometimes the PFO position is so medial, then the entry into the LV becomes difficult. So you have to see all these things. So usually the septal puncture is the imaginary midline. This is the aorta, and if the pigtail is kept into the non-coronary cusp. So usually that is the posterior border of the aorta, and this is the LA silhouette. You see, and you have to be in the midline. And if you are not able to see the LA silhouette, you do a PA angio. So you in the Leo phase you get the left atrial anatomy. So check in LO, or most of the time we check in the lateral position. Check needle tip away from the aorta, as well as in the posterior third. So this is a ideal site for the septal puncture. You can check in the RAO. Most of the time we don't check in the RAO position. That needle is away from the aorta as well as away from the coronary sinus. When the operator is satisfied with intended puncture site, the catheter needle is pressed firmly against the septum. You usually feel the bump. Cardiac pulsations are felt by the right hand holding the catheter needle. So this is very important that you feel the vibrations of the septum while keeping the catheter firmly against the septum to prevent it from slipping away. You have to be very firm, otherwise it can change the position of the septal puncture needle, and it can go pierce inadvertently at unfamiliar or unwanted places. The push assembly needle puncture, once you are sure with the anatomical landmarks that this is the proper site for septal puncture, and you have to push the first septal puncture needle, and once you have passed the septal puncture needle and you are sure that you have pierced the septum, then you just push the moline and take the needle inside the moline, because if you go with the needle, then it can puncture the roof of the left atrium, and I have seen patient getting tamponade because of the puncture of the left atrial roof by the needle. So suppose if you can shape the needle according to the size of the LA, if the enlarged LA it is 6 or 7 o'clock, enlarge LA, if there is an enlarged RA, you have to bend the needle very much. If there is no jump or pulsation, sometimes you don't get the thumb of the interatrial septum, then in that case you have to judge according to your anatomical landmarks and upon your experience. So one should remember following things which require septal attention while attempting septal puncture during BMV. That patient is having isolated MS, patient is not having kyphoscoliosis, there is no interatrial septal aneurysm or thick IS. So here you can see in the echo that this is the septal puncture here is done, and sheath enters LA and tends or pulls the septum. There is a pops through. You have to be well inside the LA with the sheath. Otherwise, you will stain the septum and you will not pierce the septum. So you have to cross the septum. That is, otherwise you will just fail, and you will stain septum. So the needle is aspirated. Once that you are sure in the left atrium, your needle is aspirated, and contrast medium is injected to confirm its entry into the left atrium. Entry of the needle in the left atrium is confirmed first by contrast injection, and you can see the pressure. Most previously we used to attach the pressure with the septal puncture needle. So once you are in the septum, you get this type of tracing. Once you puncture the septum, then you get the LA pressure tracing. So you are sure that you are into the LA. So that was good method, but with the experience and we are not using now this. So the two major problems inherent in atrial septal puncture is, one is the cardiac perforation, and second is the puncture at inappropriate atrial septal site, so that the LV entry becomes very cumbersome, or you may not be able to cross the mitral wall. So Inouye technique, which is the most widely used, was first to be described. Inouye balloon composed of nylon and rubber micromesh. It is a two-layered balloon. It is available in various sizes from 24 to 30 millimeter and has a low profile, very low profile. The balloon has three distinct parts, each with a specific elasticity, enabling them to be inflated sequentially. The sequence allows fast, stable positioning across the wall. After LAX is obtained, the anterior lateral septum is dilated and the innovative balloon is strapped over the special guide wire into the LA. You have to dilate the septum with the samurai we usually use, because otherwise it is not able to cross the innovative balloon. So after puncturing and taking LA pressure, we dilate the septum and also the local side, so there is no problem in going from the groin also. So this is the balloon. You can see the balloon, then the stretching tube, that is the stellate of the, then this is the dilator, that is samurai we usually get. This is the LV entry wire, this is the syringe, this is the caliper. You have to determine, you have to determine the size by this caliper, and you have to fix it before starting the procedure. So this is the again the assembly. You have to put the one side, you have to put the in inflation series, other side you can put extra die. When you have to increase the size of the balloon, the inflation series, then you can increase the size of the balloon, you can use that extra die for this. And it usually if you then that sometimes it becomes very challenging. If you puncture at high puncture, then you can shape the shape of the change the shape of the stellate like this, or if you, this is usually for the normal septal puncture side. If you get a low puncture, then you have to change the stellate like this. This can be done with the experience, and you can determine it during the procedure, that how, if you are not able to cross the mitral wall, you can give different shapes to the stellate or the LV entry wire. So this is the, usually you have to counterclockwise rotate the stellate, so then you get the bobbing at the mitral wall, and then you have to be very you have to have some experience, and that only helps you, that once you are sure that you are bobbing properly in the mitral wall, then you just have to pull the LV entry and push the balloon, so you will be across the mitral wall. But once you are across, you have to be sure that it should be free and it should be able to reach up to the apex. Otherwise, if you get stuck, your balloon is not properly free, then you can rupture the chordae at any time. Sometimes it is some difficulties in balloon. This BMV, you are not able to cross the interatrial septum, then you may have to redilate the septum with a 14 Felt dilator, or even with a 6 to 10 millimeter peripheral arterial balloon may be required. Applying negative pressure on the balloon can help to cross the mitral wall, and also placing the balloon at LV apex. Once the mitral wall has been crossed, the free movement, as I already said, is very important. Otherwise, there is a disastrous consequences of rupture of chordae, papillary muscles, or leaflets. So this can be done by that. You can check that whether your balloon is free or not, simultaneously pushing the catheter and pulling the stellate in opposite direction, that is the accordion maneuver, to ensure that it is partially inflated distal balloon slides freely along the orifice apex axis. After the balloon catheter is across the mitral orifice, the distal portion of balloon is inflated more fully, and the catheter is pulled back gently to confirm that inflated distal portion of the balloon is, that I will show here in the diagram. So first we inflate the distal portion, then we usually come across the mitral wall, and you get a hitching sensation there. Then you dilate the proximal part of the balloon, and finally this is the proximal portion, and then finally the portion at the mitral leaflets at the wall level gets inflated, so the wall is stretched. After each balloon inflation, the balloon catheter is withdrawn into the LA, and that you have to see the transmitral gradient across by simultaneously taking the LV pressure and the LA pressure. And at my time there was no echo machine was available, so we have to auscultate the at the site. We have to mark the auscultation site, and we used to see the auscultation. By auscultation, there is a decrease in the murmur, and there is no systolic murmur has appeared. If the transmitral valvular gradient persists and no increase in the MR is observed, another balloon inflation is usually performed by increasing the size of the balloon by 0.5 to 2 millimeter, and you can go for 2-3 dilatation, but you have to be very careful that there is no MR and the gradient is not reduced. So you should be very you should go stepwise. You should not be very aggressive that suddenly you dilate the balloon with a high pressure or single dilatation, then the chances of getting MR is very high. And the coordination between the primary operator and those who is inflating the balloon is very important, because the proper inflation at the mitral valve level is important. Otherwise, if you inflate the balloon in the subvalvular, then again the complications like MR can occur. This is the fully inflated balloon across the mitral valve. This is again, you can see here distal portion, then the proximal, and then lastly the portion which is at the valve level is inflated. So following successful dilatation, the Innovi balloon is then re-cylindrized by first reintroducing the guide wire and then the stretching tube. It is useful to leave the guide wire across the atrial septal puncture in the LA for 3 to 5 minutes after completion of the procedure, while monitoring the systemic arterial pressure. Of course, you have to give heparin once the septal puncture is done and you are sure that there is no tamponade. So various complications of the BMV MR can occur during BMV in up to 2 to 9% of patients. Cause of the MR is the tearing or stretching of commissure, that is acceptable. Failure of the leaflet cooptation, the rupture of the mitral leaflet which can be catastrophic. Rupture of the chordae, that can also lead to a moderate to severe MR. Damage to the papillary muscles. Usually the severe MR which requires immediate surgical MVR is very less. If you do it very carefully with a stepwise and proper selection, chances of severe MR which require immediate surgery is around 2 to 3%. So various precautions to avoid complications, carefully clinical evaluation and echo prior to BMV is very important. Appropriate size and proper selection of balloon. Then be sure that the balloon catheter is free in the LV cavity. It should lie free up, it should reach up to the apex. It has not been entangled by chordae or anything, so very important. If recognizing, sometimes it passes a sign indicative of severe subvalvular disease. In this case, you should not go for the full dilatation. You can go gradually and you can give a suboptimal or just result, but it should be acceptable rather than getting severe MR. So procedure related thromboembolism, a missed intracardiac thrombus or vegetation may occur sometimes, leading to stroke, which can be another complication of the procedure. In some cases, a single commissure is split during one of the first balloon inflations. This is often the result of asymmetrical commissural fusion or calcification, but splitting of a single commissure often makes it difficult to split the second commissure, because once you have opened the valve, or one commissure is opened, the balloon will go on that side also. So you just get a reasonably okay result. May not be the very excellent result, but you can accept that result. So long-term hemodynamics, 1 year after valvular problem, several parameters shows continued improvement, including reduction in the pulmonary artery pressure. It occurs even after 1 year also. There is increase in the cardiac output, PVR declines and normalizes in many patients. Then coming to the double balloon technique, which is I have not used any time, but it is described in the literature. The two balloon is inflated simultaneously. You can see here in the diagram, two balloons there are two stellate, there is two entry wire, so a little bit cumbersome as compared to the Innovi. I don't think it is used anymore nowadays. Then the monorail modification of the double balloon technique. Here there is only one wire and two balloons are there on the single balloon. First the distal balloon inflates, which is usually smaller, and the proximal later on, which is bigger in size, but is also not used very commonly. So Innovi versus double balloon, we are not using double balloon, so I don't know, but it is said that the double balloon gave some better results, but with so much difficulties. There is a learning curve for the Innovi technique for BMV, especially if I see, because now the number of mitral stenosis has decreased. When I was resident, we used to do 2 to 3 BMV every day, but now it is decreased. And I feel that this BMV has more learning curve than the angioplasty. Then a metallic commissurotome, which was developed in 1990s, Cribier-Lattec from France. In fact, he came to our institute at that time with his Cribier-Lattec balloon. We posted around 30-40 mitral stenosis BMV patient for this Cribier commissurotome. It is like a same as like used in the closed mitral commissurotomy. There is this is the closed one. This usually open across the mitral wall. This is the advantage with this device was that the metallic, this can be reused many a time, number of times. So the cost of the procedure goes down, but this is the risk of perforation is more, and then the sometimes the septal puncture should be very specific for this thing. So it is not used that frequently because it is not that friendly with the operator. So desired endpoint of the procedure is mitral valve area of more than 1 centimeter per square meter of the body surface area, complete opening up at least one commissuring, or appearance or increment of grade regurgitation greater than grade 1 by 4. So immediate results, there is improvement in valve function, results in an immediate decrease in left atrial pressure and slight increase in the cardiac index, a gradual decrease in pulmonary arterial pressure over the period of even up to 1 year. High pulmonary vascular resistance continue to decrease in the absence of restenosis. There is improvement in the pump function of the left atrium and left atrial appendage, and decrease in the left atrial stiffness over the period of some time. Complications, as I already described, procedure mortality has ranged from 0 to 3% in most series. The main cause of death are left ventricular perforation and poor general condition of the patient. The incidence of pericardium has varied from 0.5 to 12%, which is usually in the depends on the operator and his experience. If the operator is very well experienced, the chances of getting pericardium is very less. This is so because of this, you should be very patient in doing the septal puncture. If hypotension occurs during the BMV, pericardium must be suspected, and you should immediately start draining the tamponade, and you can reinfuse the blood again to the patient. Echo can be confirm the diagnosis. Embolism has occurred in 0.5 to 5% of cases in various series, but it is now decreased because of the availability of the TE. So studies of surgically excised mitral valves of patients who developed severe MR after PTMC have consistently shown three anatomical characteristics: heterogeneously thickened, that they are thickened heterogeneously with thick areas coexisting with thin or almost normal areas, severe fusion, thickening and shortening of the subvalvular apparatus, and the calcium in one or more commissures. So these are the three very important reasons for causing MR. Severe MR occur in patients with unfavorable anatomy, extensive subvalvular disease and valve calcification. The frequency of ASD after BMV varies from 10 to 90% according to the technique used for its detection. These shunts are usually small and restrictive with high velocity flow. Older age, fluoroscopic evidence of mitral valve calcification, higher echocardiographic score, higher pre-BMV NYHA function class are the factors that predispose patients to develop left to right shunt post-BMV. So definition of good immediate results is that the final valve area larger than 1.5 square centimeter, or an increase of the at least 25% in the valve area. A final valve area larger than 1.5 centimeter without mitral degradation, less grade by 2 by 4. The long-term results of the BMV is if it is initially successful, survival rates are excellent. Usually patient can have very good life for 10 to 15 years. The need for secondary surgery is infrequent, and functional improvement occurs in most cases. Restenosis after BMV has generally been defined as a loss of more than 50% of the initial gain with a valve area less than 1.5 square centimeter. The incidence of restenosis is usually low, between 2 to 40% at time intervals from 3 to 10 years. Many of my patients which I had done 15 years back or 20 years still doing well. And it is also one thing that many of the patients which has gone, young girls which has gone BMV, now they had completed their family and they are doing BMV. So that is very rewarding procedure for that purpose. So age, mitral valve area after BMV and anatomy are considered to be the predictors of restenosis. The ability to perform repeat valvuloplasty in cases of recurrent mitral stenosis is one of the potential of the BMV. You can redo it. Revalvuloplasty reports positive, immediate and mid-term outcomes in patients with favorable characteristics. So if you can, if the BMV you can compare with, it has the comparable result as compared to the open mitral commissurotomy, and it is in countries like India, developing countries, the cost is so much issue, so it reduces the cost drastically as compared to the open mitral commissurotomy. Coming to the BMV for a special patient population, BMV can be safely performed in most patients in those post-surgical or after balloon commissurotomy. Patient has already gone CMC or OMC, they can again go for the BMV. Two major mechanisms responsible for valvular restenosis are the commissural refusion and progression of the subvalvular thickening or degeneration. Outcomes are found safe and favorable for repeat BMV. However, 10-year event-free survival rates were slightly higher for patients who underwent initial BMV for de novo MS. Coming to the pregnant patient, which is very important, increase in the intravascular volume by 30 to 50% in pregnancy may pose serious hemodynamic consequences by increasing the transmitral gradient and left atrial pressure, leading to acute flash pulmonary edema. So maternal mortality can be very high with BMV. So doing BMV during the pregnancy is very rewarding. INOU balloon is preferred. External shielding during procedure should be used. Try to reduce the fluoroscopic time. Reduce the frame rate for fluoroscopy. Keep the intensifier as close to possible to the patient so the radiation scattering is less. Avoid angulated projection. Usually do it in the IP projection. And of course the experienced operator. Procedure should be best avoided until organogenesis is complete, so you should try to do it after 5 months of conception. Unless the patient is severely symptomatic, then you have to do it early. If emergency BMV becomes unavoidable during early months of pregnancy, then target of the radiation exposure should be set as doses greater than 50 mg or associated with congenital malformation. Now I will not discuss regarding the retrograde transarterial technique. So coming to the summary, BMV is usually a safe procedure. Complications are low, especially with the experience at hand and availability of so many technology, availability of the transesophageal echo on the site. And most valve TR or MR is less than 3%. Gratifying results in majority of patients. The procedure of choice in pliable mitral stenosis. Thank you.